So anyway, nice to meet you, everyone, virtually, and I'm gonna go for this. So yeah, thank you, Allien, again for inviting me and give the possibility to show my work. And how do I go about this? Yeah, I just quickly, you said it already. I didn't know there would be a bio, but it's very important for me that I was raised in East Germany. Basically, the first 20 years of my life I spent behind the wall. It's always a little bit context to get to where how it became this practice specifically and how I'm that person. It's not possible to separate that, because that also made me an autodidact and full freestyle person, basically, because I was not able to access education at that time. That was my first music making computer and also my first computer. Has any one of you guys ever seen such a thing in real life? Question?
No, never.
Me neither.
So that was 93.
Everyone is saying no in the chat. Howell, Kai, Kevin, Lauren all saying no.
Yeah. So this is a Commodore 64. It was a portable computer. It was actually made for gaming, but there was somebody who wrote a sequencer software for it. And some insanely amazing music store salesman, basically, and software builder gave me this thing and said, you know what, girl, you need that. Because I was looking for an outlet for making more music, and I was so lucky that he gave me this. That changed everything. Sometimes the kindness of a stranger is the greatest gift to your life. So that was my studio then around 99. Basically, I lived in London for a while and moved then back to Berlin in the 90s because Berlin was really fun. And that was my first studio, so to speak. Since then, I've been traveling the planet as AGF and in several collaborations and playing concerts here and there. And here's just a short shot of audiovisual performances I've been doing. Ars Electronica, Sonar 2002, that was basically my first solo record. And I have played so many shows that I cannot remember them. I've tried to write them down. It has been an amazing ride, and there has been moments where I felt so happy and grateful, undescribably grateful that I've had a chance to be that person. But there has been also times I hated it and I couldn't do it anymore, and I was so exhausted and I was so tired of it. So roughly my response to playing concerts around the planet, which is now, since 1 year, not anymore possible, has been already many years ago to think behind club and think behind the possibility of traveling. And yeah, I wrote this poem once. I sometimes perform it when I do lectures in front of people. Maybe now it would be weird. But I play beats and speak poetry and speak texts. And I also produce records. I produced more than 30 records. They're all on my Bandcamp, or many of them. If you're interested, you can check them out. And I play a short track, which is not very old, maybe half a year old, for you now to little bit get context of my music. Hey, can you still actually see me? Or
Cam, you're small in the corner.
okay, cool.
There was a question what the track was, the track
I
name.
think it's Abantia, like the password you gave.
Great, thank you.
So it's a series of goddesses EPs I'm making. So I'm obviously a Marxist feminist, raised Stalinist, Leninist, post-Nazi. Um, that was my upbringing. But now I'm kind of working on diversifying goddesses. It's more of a fun project of many of my, beside many of my serious projects. I love making these kind of like anti-beats. They still kind of play with the aesthetics and the context of club or, you know, contemporary electronic music, but they're quite distorted and almost noise music, I would say. Anyway, I want to quickly play you one piece, which is quite recent. So maybe I just carry on. So in 2008, I moved to an island Annie was talking about in Northern Finland. And you can see a very old map here where this sign is. You can see a little island. It's called Hailuoto. It's basically in the armpit of Scandinavia. I moved there for private reasons, family, my partner is Finnish. Anyway, that really influenced my practice and changed my way of looking at music. I was also at the time very tired of being in urban spaces and traveling and so on. So I was really looking for a different way to practice sound. And I started to join a Finnish association called BioArt Society. I can talk about this later. Please also write questions down and ask me anything later, and be as open, as curious, as crazy, intrusive as you want to be. This is okay, I can handle. Um, yeah, and in this context of living very remotely and far away from, you know, hip places, I was also founding this arts organization Annie was talking about called High Art quite early on, and actually had a quite big European agricultural cultural grant to do that. And out of this, for example, with the many other sound practitioners now working for a long time on this kind of notion of rural and being remotely, maybe I was also a little bit involved in making the Manifesto for Rural Futurism, which is now published by Leandro Pisano and Beatriz Ferreira. I wanted to show this to you because it's a quite nice and interesting way to look at rurality or non-centeredness or periphery, basically. And I a little bit felt inspired the other day when I was listening to Silvia Federici's latest talk, when she was talking about utopia as a critique. I like the idea of, in the context of rural or living remotely, also imagining it as a utopia. But this is a little bit explains the context for my practice on the island. So for a few years, basically from 2011 to 2017, I was doing community work on the island. We had a sound choir with basically everyone who lives here who wanted to come, from the bank manager to the mayor to the teachers to whoever, kids. And pretty soon I opened a little empty bakery and made it into a media community lab for the few children who live on an island. We are only 1,000 people, and only 80 school children or something max are living here. So I basically was introducing audio and sound stuff to them. We did field recordings and worked on audio literacy, and we made a lot of music. I had an iPod orchestra with them. At the time, I was thinking to show the kids a different way of dealing with pocket computers, basically, with digital technology, not just use it in a way for like, yeah, how it's used in communication or gaming. So like be a little bit more creative around it. For example, we built an app as well together. I also told them who Edward Snowden is and what he revealed and things like that, and Ada Lovelace. And so it was also around digital literacy. We did many projects. Also worked with older people on the island, this music making with tablets, and we built sculptures and all sorts of things. And yeah, and we built this sound app for the island, with kids' field recordings, with an artist called Juan Regino Duarte. He came here. I also did 10 sound residencies at the time, in that time. Anyway, after a while, I was more interested in actually doing sound camps, because it turned out that the remote and socially sparse experience here on the island is actually not so suited for, let's say, artisan residencies, because I think it's okay for people who have to be really lonely and concentrate, but if you want to be social, it's kind of harder. And I thought it would be making much more sense to make camps, and so I started doing these sound camps with high art, different kinds and different goals. But for example, they all had very transnational or international participants, and they were very, very intense and very deep, because we were hanging out really closely for 1 week. And after that, it was kind of hard to not know each other, basically. So this is a shot from one of the camps, which also Annie was part of. It was called Sonic Wilderness. We also, with high art, built a sonic sculpture by the artist Lukas Kühne. It's a kind of like he calls it liquid stone, a cement sculpture in a landscape, in an empty landscape, which kind of works like a amplifier of sound. And I have here a little video with Annie, yay, showing the camp, how it was, how we were setting up the situation there. It's just a setup. I hope you can hear a little bit and see. There was an instrument building camp where I had basically invited mostly instrument builders and people who work creatively with technology. It was an amazing camp. There's also lots of documentation online if you want to know more. Yeah, it's just a short documentation of making a setup in this sculpture. We also had, Annie, do you remember, we had acoustic physician and scientist over to explain acoustics. That was quite interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's been a question of whether the structure is there. So I put, from Lara, so I put a link into Lukas Kühne's website, because he has several sculptures.
Yeah, he now has, I think he even built now one in Japan as well.
Oh.
So there's one in Iceland, there's one in Estonia, in Tallinn, then ours, and now I think he built the 4th in Japan, but I haven't seen that yet. But this is his thing, and they're very different looking at times, and yeah. Remarkable piece, and it's a public sculpture, so it's open. Anybody can go there whenever they want. Sometimes people sleep in there, or moose hunters are hiding in there, or whatever, fishermen. And also it's used by the population. Many like tourists come by, or visitors, or photographers, or dancers make pieces in there. Or for example, also there's a group of local Christmas song singers. They go there in Christmas and sing songs in there. And it's amazing to do workshops there, actually. I've done many, and also concerts and stuff. And go there with kids as well. They love it, obviously. They scream, always. So loud. Yeah. Any other question?
I think so. People were saying, someone said that they had seen, when you showed the picture of the Commodore 64, someone said,
yeah.
Rocco said, I've seen one but never used it. And Nathan said, Yes, I'm old enough, but I'm not one of Annie's students, so that's that's a guest who remembers it.
Yeah, I still have it actually, but it's rotting, sadly. I can't throw it away. Anyway, in these, this is one of the artist in residencies I've made. Ryoko, maybe some people of you know her also. She's in Huddersfield, based in Huddersfield, sound practitioner, and we made a really beautiful project on the sea with a local fisherman, where she had built an instrument with a Geiger counter. Is this English? Geiger? How do you say?
Yeah.
To measure, to measure radioactivity, and we were protesting against nuclear power plant they want to build there in a very remote, beautiful area where nobody almost lives, and we were basically playing to the sea and bewitching the place that the power plant is never going to be built. So far, it's not there yet. They still try to build it, but we are remaining hopeful to our spell. Yeah, this is the same camp where Annie was also part of, the instrument building camp. There was some sort of blueberry techno intervention. Also performative field recordings. We had one, we were basically making rhythmic music or music sound, and where somebody was recording us while we were doing this. And so I've done many of these camps. They've been incredibly rewarding in terms of sound exchange of practices, skill share, also just friendship and you know, rest, or maybe it wasn't restful, but it was kind of taking yourself out of a situation it's that you are in, and then it's kind of like a real camp. Has been very interesting experience to do these. And I was now able also to sometimes take the camp somewhere else. So I was invited to do it in other places. For example, I went 2018. I went to Indonesia, Yogyakarta, and I did a feminist camp there with very diverse Southeast Asian group of women. For example, this piece we made in the rice field. I play this quickly. So yeah, it stops. It was longer, but actually the whole piece became a composition, and we later performed the same piece on stage as well. So that was one of these interventions which I liked a lot, because it not only took us outside, but also made a collaborative improvisation in a rice field. It was very hot, like 40 degrees. People were walking around us, but we were also able to actually write a composition there together through this. It was a really great piece. And there were more interesting works coming out of this camp, and I also have a website for this. If you're interested, I can send it to you guys. It has been an incredible, interesting trip. And that was a year later. I went to Hanoi, actually, to Vietnam, to do a similar camp, Sonic Wilderness, it's called, intervention, where we were working in the city in Vietnam, in Hanoi. And this is some sort of form of treeing here. I was doing a silent meditation in the Lenin Park with this group of participants. And we were sitting around that tree, and it was following the story of the government had just cut a lot of trees in the city, and young people were protesting, like environmentalists were protesting against taking those trees down, and many of them went to prison and were silenced. The censorship in Vietnam is really strong. And so we were doing this silent meditation around the tree, basically in protest of that practice, and also this actually quite brutal surveillance techniques that exist in that society. Maybe I can go back to this picture, because while doing these camps, I also started, or we together as collectives, we started to develop ideas of how practices or little exercises and ideas of what to do, of being outside and taking our instruments with us, or just be with body there and think about sonic perspective. So I was inspired by this book by an African futurist writer called Nedi. I don't know if you know her. She wrote this book called Binti. It's a trilogy, and there's a hero character, the main character. She is a mathematical genius, and she is trying to meditate and to make magic happen. It's totally amazing. So I was thinking about treeing in a sonic context, and we kind of developed this idea of merging with a tree and frequencies, and meditate basically on hertz, on frequency, while we are in these groups and doing these kind of I don't know, you can say silly exercises, but they have been actually really rewarding and quite beautiful group exercises. I'm actually writing an article about this right now. Will come out quite soon as well. So where I'm a little bit writing these things down. We just did in the field, because many of these things have just been really improvised and how do you say, just come out of action and out of a collective action. So yeah. And so sonic wilderness has been a great kind of tagline for lots of these let's say group interactions, going outside. I've also done some of them in cities. For example, we did one at CTM a few years ago in front of the Reichstag, Kanzleramt, like in the middle of the city. I did some in military spaces and so on, but there was a thread going, or this is a continuous thread going through these practices. And I also had started being obsessed with mushrooms and also trying to communicate with non-human species. And here, for example, in the instrument camp, Anja Erdmann and I were trying to build this kind of communication line to these mushrooms, and I have many recordings out of this. We also made several, I don't know, moss mushroom pieces. Here another image of me sonifying that very poisonous mushroom, by the way. It gave me a really bad reaction. And here's a piece, one instrument builder had built in our workshop. Till Bobermann, he built this very funny wind catcher mushroom sonifying instrument. And subsequently, Till invited me to write an article with him about instrumentality in sonic wilderness, and it is published in this book you can see here, Instrumentality in Sonic Wilderness, exactly. In the 21st century. I don't know if anyone of you knows this book, but since you're a university, you can probably get that somewhere. I have it here also somewhere. It's a quite interesting book. Yeah, so I've been really inspired by radical ecology. In the first moment, it maybe doesn't have so much to do with sound, but for me, it has a lot. Not just because it's known that John Cage was a huge mushroom fan, but also I have found a great inspiration in thinking about radical ecology. This is an actual grassroots movement. You can look up in the internet. I don't know if you guys know, anybody heard of that? It's completely inspiring to think about in many, many ways. Practice, health, healing, sound, networking, underground, invisibility, communication. I don't know if I said this already, but it's very inspiring. So I'm using a lot of these intersections for me to also learn about composition, actually, and it has led me to a lot of interesting ways to think about composition, basically. Another book I can recommend, which came out of this camp versus sound practice, is this book. It's also online, I think. Tales of Sonic Displacement, and it's a sound-based artist in residency network documentation of this one program we ran called SOCOS, which also that some of the camps were part of. And we were connected with like 5 to 6 different sound practicing places in Europe. It was a European grant, and yeah, it's a nice account of lots of sound practitioners' work. So I can really recommend this. There's at least 40 artists in there. We feature and we show the work we've done together. It's a beautiful project. Okay, and this is a little sudden, but it's a project I did the other day together with actually a choreographer, and field recordings of by scientists of endangered and extinct species. Shall I just carry on? Because I want to go somewhere. How much time did I talk already? Half an hour.
Yeah.
Okay.
We had a question. I don't know if you want to.
Yes, go for it.
So Lauren asked, did the mushrooms make sounds?
Well, we could extract sound, let's say like that. So, because actually there is a video, I don't know why it's not in here anymore, it's gone. There is a video where actually my touch and temperature change and fluidity change shows communication. It was a PD patch, like, and it made really interesting singing kind of responses or modulating responses, like kind of super collider sound dish. If you would input something, for example, in that software, and the system that we were using is actually from the Mexican artist team Interspecifics. I don't know if you know them. They built this kind of like bio feedback or like software, and I was using their system. And yeah, I got some very nice sounds I would have not been able to otherwise either compose nor think of, or I wouldn't say that they make sound. I don't think that we are, as humans, capable of being so quiet to actually hear them. It's a question of scale, in my opinion. Does it make sense?
Thanks, Antje. And there's a question from Robbie. Is there a link for the mushroom pieces?
Yes, there is. Actually, I put everything of this in a radio piece called Mycelium, and I can link you guys.
Yeah, I think Kira has found it. So mycelium.poemproducer.com.
Exactly. And also the camp in Indonesia is Nusa Sonic at Poem Producer.
Okay, great. I found one link. I don't know if that was the right one or not.
You know Nusa Sonic? Yeah.
From Howell.
Sorry?
Another question from Howell about mushrooms. Can you stimulate some sort of predictable result from the mushroom using just touch / vibration / electricity? Anything short of actually damaging the mushroom, like a call and response type of interaction, for example?
Well, you damage them a little bit when you put these electrodes in there, or when I did. So, I don't know. Predictable, no. Nothing is predictable there. I would say what was happening was exactly unpredictability and something curious, something, you know, you wouldn't, it wasn't like, yeah. The software worked this way. You would have to give an input, for example, either just a field recording, just a field, which we did, or you even give an instrument in there, but I just sang and talked into it, and it modulated my voice, and it was kind of random. Sometimes it would do something and sometimes it wouldn't, and I could not 100% say why. And when I would touch it, it would be more excited and more responding than if I wouldn't touch it. But that could also have been my touch, you know, just my physical, I don't know, electrolytical, is this a word? Yeah, influence. So I didn't, obviously the conditions in forest are not that you can make a thoroughly research like that. We also went into the lab actually with Anja Erdmann, and we did some more experiments, but they were just very entertaining and very fun and surprising and interesting, and we weren't looking for like real science results, so we didn't go so thoroughly through it. It would be interesting though. But if I think about it, most likely I don't know. No, I don't know. I'm not going to say anything. You should try. It's getting easier and easier with Arduino, and you know, into specifics have these GitHub. There's a GitHub what's it called? Repository where you can get all the. I can also send you links if you want. It's very interesting and super intriguing and very much fun to make music like that and try build a relationship with the mushroom also. Some of them I have eaten, and the one poisoned me. I had this one day. It was in late autumn. I didn't know it, and I was like really shocked how. I didn't think it would have been that poisonous, but it was.
Antye,
like, yeah.
Thank you, very interesting. I think I will try it. And Gerald asks, could you mention the name of the PD patch? Is that what is on GitHub?
Yeah, that's the GitHub. That's just into specifics, and I think they're constantly developing it. For example, this project was 2016. It's already 5 years ago, so I'm sure they made already better.
Did you say?
But I can
specifics.
Into specifics, yeah. It's also on the Mycelium website about they are mentioned there. I'm obviously crediting them for it. So from there you should find it, or I can also look later.
Thank you.
Mexican, yeah.
I think I found it, so I'll post the link.
It should be on the Mycelium Poem Producer page. They are linked there. You can just click there.
Great.
At least you get to their website, and from there you can see their work. Should I carry on?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. Gerald.
So yeah, Extinction Stories is out now. It is like these are 20 stories of endangered, critically endangered or extinct species, and it was a collaboration with the choreographer, and it was an actual stage piece. But because we had all this work, we made now a Bandcamp version, which we offer for people to listen, and you can also donate to extinction programs and grassroots organizations, indigenous organizations who fight for these species to not go extinct. I did mainly sound facilitation and composition for this. I got lots of people I know to read these extinction stories, and it's quite interesting, but also very, very deep. It's very many stories and very long. So but you can get it. It's also Extinction Room is basically the artist name. I can also send you a link to this. Yeah, It is interesting because I worked very much in a form of, I worked with these scientific recordings from scientists' sound banks, and they were given to me, and I made these compositions for the performance, and then later added some sort of like podcasty speculative fiction versus basically documentation of these pieces on top of it, and also in different accents and people from all over the world, Philippines, Vietnam, South Africa, Iraq, all places Europe. So I really chose or worked with a lot of people from all over the world. So it was a very interesting project. It just came out in December. Something I've also been doing for the last maybe 15 years, I would say now, I would call it now feminist sonic technologies, but it is somehow an investigation in language and sound and feminisms. Basically, looking at history and a language and storytelling and literal lives of women that have been forgotten and many people don't know. And so, for example, I did a German, Japanese, Finnish, Russian, and now a Greek version. The Greek version is going to come out next month. It has been very intense project and becoming really an important part of my practice. I didn't expect this to happen, but kind of happens. That's why I also want to mention it, because it has led me to work kind of a little bit outside of a normal music practice. So in the beginning, it was kind of like an experiment or something like an activist or kind of gender justice project. And more as I do them, they also become like an entirety on its own, like an own kind of research project or sound. I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe you know better. I just wanted to tell to you because it's also interesting. It works a lot with words, or the imagination of words, or the forgetting of words, or how women tell history, for example. And as Annie mentioned, I'm part of Female Pressure. It's like a transnational, international network with now 2,000, almost 3,000 women in 80 countries. And yeah, it's a very interesting, we are on social media and you can follow us everywhere, but the network itself is off social media. So we are connected via our own server and our own email list. And it is quite interesting practice to be organized like this. I've learned a lot through this. And one thing which also I collaborated with Annie a little bit. No, we did present this together. In 2015-16, we made a solidarity and awareness campaign for these women defense armies in northern Syria called Rojava. It's a Kurdish, West Kurdish region. And that was a beautiful project and very interesting project to do as a network. First time basically stepping out of pure music and do something that's actually related to women who are, for example, not able to do music and are not, for them it's not possible to be the way, engage the way with life how we do, because they literally fight for their survival. And I was initiating the project, and then we were like a working group of 15 women, and we made maybe 20-25 songs, and we put them out on all sorts of social media, and also made a Bandcamp edition. And it was centered around this Dr. Delay. Meanwhile, she wrote a PhD about this women revolution in Rojava. At the time, 2016, nobody knew about this, and I think we had like really a lot of attention for this, like literally 50,000 listens for very difficult work like this. It was quite interesting how it actually did work, I think. And this also gave me the confidence to think about music in a more in a different way than I had hoped it could be. So Annie and I, for example, we presented the project at CTM in 2016 at the discourse program, and we had one woman who had been there in the field, and a Turkish female pressure member, and women from the defense army there, and we were actually talking about the real conditions that are happening in this war region, and they're still ongoing right now. So it's happening. I don't want to go too much into it. There's also a website for this, and I just want to say that this was so influential for me, and was a very important project which changed entirely my practice, basically. I wanted to, this is a little off topic, but just wanted to show you that I'm also part of BioArt Society. If you're interested in this, BioArt Society, you can also become a member. Just so I'll give you this reference quick, it's quite interesting. Yeah, anyway, so what I was saying about, how much time do I still have, Annie?
I would say 20-ish minutes.
Okay, so yeah, so this project about Rojava really encouraged me to work more in I was already doing a lot of, in my opinion, political, or I was looking and searching for political activism, protest sounds. I was really working quite a lot to figure out a way to use sound, not just like as some sort of, oh, what do you say, like art exhibition thing, but for real, like really, I don't know, find ways to be useful with that, with sound or music. And so I was thinking about ideas, what to do, and basically just now I'm coming back to this. I was reading a lot. For example, this book has been also a huge influence. Susan Bickford, The Dissonance of Democracy, Listening, Conflict, and Citizenship, a book which argues that a dissonance, that democracy is like listening to complete dissonant, noisy stuff because it's so messy, and how she argues how this influences political life and also general listening practices, how they are influencing politics and so on. So I recommend this book. It's from the 90s, but it's incredibly well written and a little bit underreported. I don't know, maybe you guys learned about it. I was thinking in this context of composition or writing music, you know, not in a way how we think as musicians in our days, like we pop up our software and then we start composing. And I was more thinking what music can be, and what's the potential of it, like where, if we are making music for a utopia, for a critical utopia, or for something we all want to actually live with, maybe composition should be less in the grid and less composed and less thought about in advance, but just rather like mycelium networks, be growing. So this is my mantra right now. So if the score is the potential of what can happen, a future possibility, think about sound as growing, initiating connections, growing into decentralized networks, intersectional trends, corporate feminist, sonic wilderness, collaborative practices, exploring sonic realities and feminist technologies. Oh, it sounds a little fat, I'm sorry, but I'm trying to find a language that leads me to a different kind of practice, also in music or even music publishing. So last year I applied for a grant to build a new space, which deals much more with political sound and also political listening, and also the question of what is political sound. And this is the space. It's called Rec On. It was originally derived from this military term, reconnaissance, like recon in military is used to how to say, research, like how to see, find something. I think the English translation is enlightenment. Sounds very strange. In German, it's Aufklärung. You probably know what I mean. So the idea is to build a space that is growing, that is non-determined from the beginning. And then I started very little with a small website, and it builds, ask questions like how to use sound to empower change and improve life, actual conditions of life, how sound is explored in recognizing issues, political issues, material issues, how is sound distributed, amplified, access to media airwaves, for example, or access to publishing, distribution in scale and time and space, and how can sound be useful to interpret data, hidden data, compressed data, and information, yeah, through sound or arts and storytelling. So these were the questions I was asking, and I started building the platform with a section called Audio Collectiveness, and I invited 2 sound artists I admire greatly who work almost explicitly in some sort of sound activism. For example, Sukitoa Onamao is a Moroccan practitioner. She does a lot of sound work around animal rights movement, and I basically interviewed her and made, so to speak, some sort of like, it's more than a podcast, it's a soundscape of her talking about her practice and her music or her sound. And equally, I interviewed and worked with Meira Asher on an episode, and she works very much in between the Israeli and Palestinian conflict, living in the West Bank, and her work is very anti-militaristic and beautiful stuff. Very difficult work. Also practiced for over 25 years. Incredible stuff. So also her interview, and also I asked questions like, what do you think sound can do? You know. So this is how I started, and then I built this space, Feminist Sonic Technologies, where I now start to exhibit my own, but also other people's work around feminism and sonic feminism. It's very fresh and young, so there's 2 exhibitions for now. One work by a researcher and sonic story maker called Sea is the New Land. She went in Sri Lanka to areas to figure out how fisher women are organizing there against land and sea extraction. It's a very beautiful piece. And I also made a piece about murdered activists, women activists there. It's on the side there. And then I built this piece, Recon, or like this space called Recon, which is something I want to investigate more and want to learn more about and want to find out a new short form audio. So just 1 minute piece of audio. And in this 1 minute, you are almost like a haiku. You're very compressed, tell about a hidden or forgotten or unknown, maybe future story or something you know. For example, I made a piece about oppression, about femicide, about Frontex. I can tell about this more. And the latest edition we made came out of a workshop I just did recently. And we were talking just in a group about politics, and one of them was an economist, and he was talking about some new movement under economists called plural economics. I don't know if you have heard about this. And so quite quickly I decided, let's make a Recon episode about plural economics. So we made this piece, 3 people of us, we collected all information we could find all over the world, and we built a reader and an open Etherpad and an organizational space to figure this out. And we also wrote this composition, and I can play it to you. I hope it goes off now. 1 minute about plural economics.
On plural economics. What do we need? What does the water need? What does the butterfly need? How can we breathe? And how can we be warm, safe, healthy, and see our faraway friends? search for new economics, social communitary, productive models but kind, the need for language, definitions, and analytical clarity, dissecting structures, the worship of money, agency, changing institutions, system, values, for profit or donut, our relation about how we see the world, multiple approaches, biophysical limits, across disciplines, people, kin, and planet. A redefinition about how we see the world.
1 minute. So what you hear in the background is a sonification of that economical model this collaborator Gregor made there. And I wrote that poem out of all information. We actually had to write a definition for plural economics because it doesn't exist yet. But that was also quite exciting. Yeah, so this is where I'm at now. This is the episode we made about Frontex in last autumn, in September came out. Also very exciting, also worked with sonification, and I sonified their budget. Who of you knows what Frontex is? Raise your hand. I guess I'm kind of also in the end.
Just one person raised their hand there. So maybe.
So that's really, you see, so because Frontex has been since quite much in the media actually, since a few months, and actually yesterday something incredible happened. So Frontex is the European army. So basically, without much normal people, let's say us normal people knowing, the EU has built up an army with that kind of budget you can see there, without much of a democratic process or accountability, how do you say, measures and so on. And that's not just what I'm saying. These are facts, and these you can read in this episode of Frontex I've made. There is also a reader on the side to the right and an Etherpad, and you can have access to all these journalists who have been speaking about this. So this is the first time I collaborated with journalists actually, because this was too difficult topic for me to do without them. I needed some sort of verification, and it was actually quite interesting and very exciting and a new thing for me, and that's where I'm going basically now. So this is, for example, how we have an Etherpad then. These are the journalists I've worked with, and also each of these Recon episodes leads to a collection of organizations who already work in that field. And if you want to be active or if you want to contribute, you can go there and look what's out there and maybe organize with them or make your own organization or stuff like that. So what I'm doing is I'm experimenting something cross profession, kind of trying to be less segregated maybe. I'm really shocked at times how we are all up our own professions and our own things, and maybe not everyone, but especially now it's even crazier with everyone being just in their homes. So perhaps there is a huge potential in stuff like also branching out from academia, you know, into other areas and so on. And I, for example, have never been in academia, but I'm very curious, but also at times very shocked how little academia actually has an effect on people's lives. All this knowledge, all this amazing PhDs people doing, where is it showing in the world? You know, sometimes I'm asking this, of course it is. But there's moments when you doubt that they have an effect and you're wondering, where's all that stuff, equally art funding, what's happening to all this? What are we actually doing? We are accumulating all this knowledge and all this beautiful art, and how is it actually affecting people for real? You know, and this is questions I'm working with, and many people work with, probably many of you work with. I know that Annie does, and so this is, it really burns on me, and I would like to do more and learn more and get better, and curious also to work with this new formats of sound, because I think there is a huge sensitivity or understanding of that sound has to be tackled with. It cannot anymore be treated as the last piece of shit on your making of something. I'm saying this quite rudely, but quite often it is like that. If you watch anything media, sound is often you know, the last thing they pay for or care for, or so yeah, this is what I'm caring for. And maybe lastly, just quickly, I'm sure maybe some people of you know Sylvia Winter, something I'm reading and dealing with, very important for me. This book has been on my shelf for the last month, and I'm slowly crawling through it and painfully reading it, because some parts are so painful to my own history and my own practice, and basically decolonizing my own shit. And also unlistening imperialism, unlistening white feminism, things I've done. So I really can recommend this book if you haven't heard of it. It's blowing my mind. Revolutionary Feminisms, of course, very important book, the latest update on where we're at with that methodology. And that's it. If you want to find me on social media, I'm only on Twitter, poem producer. Well, one thing more, one last thing. This is something I made for a different kind of presentation, and I saw this earlier and thought it was quite interesting. I don't know if that is. Yeah, I was asked what I think the role of the artist is. You know, it's such a crazy question, but are we there to be used by society? Are we using society? Are we actually contributing something, you know, profound? Are we entertainment? And I was thinking about this a little bit, and yeah, I think mostly what I think is powerful to me is expressing or like building a vision for a like freer life, you know, like less confined to all that stuff that's restricting imagination, so to speak. Yeah, and I think listening can play a really, really important role in that, because it's a very visual culture we're living in, and I think listening has a different kind of level of understanding and consciousness, and maybe also even connecting. And I'm very interested in collective listening right now, and I'm not sure what I'm thinking about it, but I'm thinking about it. And yeah, I think that's the end of my presentation, and you are very welcome to grill me as much as you want. Thank you for listening. We can also take a break, Anina. You said you want to take a short break.
Thank you so much, Antye. That was
You're welcome.
Talk, and I think gave both a good overview of your practice, which has been going on since the 90s, I guess, and there's so many different things you've done, but you also, I think, gave such a good account of, I don't know, the things that were really significant, that changed you, transformed you, the way you think and do things. And I think what we got increasingly towards the end was this like centrality of like politics and like what, yeah, like the question of what is political sound, or what is the relationship between sound and politics, and the different ways that you're working through that in your practice, as kind of in your activism. And it's, yeah, all been so kind of rich and interesting. I'm sure we're going to have a lot to talk about. So hopefully you can see all the thanks coming in the chat. I would suggest that we all, for reasons of access, take a short break and come back refreshed for our Q&A. So let's say, should we say 5 minutes? It's UK time 3:40, so let's meet back here at 3:45, 1:45, whatever hour you are, whatever time zone you're in. And then we'll start with a few student questions, and then we'll open up to the wider audience following on from that. So thank you, Antye, so much, and thank you everyone else. I'll see you in 5 minutes.
Great, see you.
You can use the away function at the bottom left icon if you wish to. See you, everyone.
Hi, Annie.
Hi.
You put all these cool links and all the references in the chat. Well done, everyone.
I tried to. Oh, there was one that I was just. What was the revolutionary feminism?
Feminisms? Yeah, it's the it's quite recent, also maybe half a year.
Verso.
Brenner, yeah, Verso books, yeah. It's a really good book. There's actually another one which is really amazing. Have you read this Deciding for Ourselves by Cindy Milstein? Really cool. It's like she went into actual real existing anarchist movements and interviewed and investigated them and they wrote articles to her book, and she made it's a really beautiful book also in relation to direct democracy, Deciding for Ourselves. I love that book. There's, for example, also an article by Dilla the Kurdish scholar. Hers is so good because I was really blown away by her description of the Kurdish society. Really beautiful. Deciding for Ourselves.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any students from the designated Q&A group here? If you could put up your hands and I can let you lead the group. Or alternatively, I can see that some of you have written questions on the Padlet for Antye.
I'm reading Tim's question.
We can start with, I mean, Tim, you're a student, aren't you? Why don't you go, do you want to go first? Do you want us to read out your question, or do you want to read it? Or do you want to come on the microphone and speak it yourself?
Okay, I can read it. My question is, how do you think about making this vision of a freer, more interconnected life a reality? It is obviously much bigger than one person, and this is something I've always think about. How do I actually turn these visions of a bigger picture, it's going away, into a realistic project that will have a sustaining impact? It, of course, has to stem from a collective change in perspective. So how do you go about trying to change that perspective? Yeah. Well, I do think that's the potential of art, isn't it? Also information, and also any sort of input basically can lead to. But what I think is specific about sound is our capacity to listen and perhaps comprehend things differently. And I'm not a scholar on this, but I would argue that our human capability of reacting to sound is different than reacting to language, like intellectually, or reacting to image. I do think there is something we don't know about and we can't speak about because we just can't even comprehend. I don't know what you guys think. Maybe you have better ideas, but I do think there is a huge potential either in our brains or in our history, in our collective consciousness. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. Perhaps some people live that part religiously. I, for example, don't, but I do think that there is something that's very much connected to listening. And perhaps that's also something I'm interested in, like you, Tim, thinking about connecting our single practices. And that's why I also mentioned the book about decolonizing and unlearning imperialism, unlearning neoliberalism, to think about how sound, basically, how we can start thinking of our practice not anymore just as individualist practice. As much as it's fun to be in the limelight and be, do something great, but it always has a larger context, and you're always part of a community. You always belong somewhere. And I think my main answer to all this is organize. I mean, I have gotten the greatest satisfaction out of being in communities and being in groups, and then still go back and enjoy doing my own stuff. But reconnecting to whatever you are personally connected with, you know, I would say that's really good stuff. Is it somehow an answer? And friendships, you know, also what I earlier said about I'm feeling about very strongly that we are so segregated. I really mean that. I'm at times, I think it's in some societies worse than in others, but I still think that most of societies are extremely racist, extremely fascist. And that shows, you know, it shows in everything. It shows in the surveillance, how everything is built. Our new technological world, as well as our real world, as the border world, necropolitics, biopolitics. So the more the segregation can go away, the more peaceful, I think, the more, what you said? You said something good. You said this very well. Interconnected life can become reality, I think. That's why I also recommend this book, Potential History, because Aisha Ariella Asuli in this book argues, and I find that really, really the only way to go is literally also go into decolonize yourself and your practice and your life and your identity and your position and your financials, your ownership, you know, everything basically. And it's very interesting to think about this also in context of making art, I think. And she argues that. So I really recommend that book.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's a really interesting question about kind of the collective and the individual and what that means in terms of a sound practice, because I guess on the one hand you have people kind of doing their thing, you know, maybe making music, releasing it, or making sound art, doing that. And I think what your practice showed was increasingly you've been making these connections and trying to almost bring people together. Like the most recent, the Rec On project, is a kind of collective platform and way of amplifying different issues that, you know, you're giving importance, or you're finding people doing stuff you're interested in and amplifying them and putting it all together. So there's something kind of very dialogic and intersubjective about the way that
I want to try, and I also want to build the platform the way that it's governed differently. That not I'm going to be you know, that it's not hierarchical. I want to build it into a co-op sort of networked project as well. And I'm currently actually working with some digital governance projects to figure that out, also to make it maybe hopefully sustainable, because for now I've gotten grants to do it, but they will run out for sure. And what is then, you know, so I'm working on this also. It's quite interesting. There's one funny question about Enfys Nest. Nobody has asked me that, and I was hoping one day somebody's gonna ask me that. Kai Pritchard asked me.
And by the way, I just wanted to say, not negating people who make albums or do sound art at all. I think all that stuff needs to happen as well. Kai, do you want to come on your mic, or would you like us?
Yeah, I can ask it if you want. Just so I was looking through your like Bandcamp. I just noticed the name Enfys Nest. I definitely recognized it, but it was under your goddesses. But so I did like research. But that's the character from Star Wars, right? The Solo film.
Yeah.
Like that.
Very cool.
I was just wondering,
yeah.
like, what's the deal? You know, next to, like, Hawaiian goddesses and stuff, and yeah.
Yeah. It is definitely a joker card in this whole thing. I thought she kind of has the potential for a future goddess. That's all. Okay. You know, that's why I put her in there. And this is absolutely not serious. You know, I mean, I think of religious or like of concepts like that. They are the ideas of us, you know. So I thought I could have been equally Rihanna in there or something, you know. But I think she mostly, or I think it is kind of a Hollywood Hollywood character that could be a god or goddess one day. Yeah. But funny that you asked it, because I was hoping one day somebody would ask me that.
Yeah, no, it's just it's a cool. The song's really good as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool.
I missed that reference.
Okay.
Glad you picked up on it, Kai. Lauren, you've got a question in the chat and on the Padlet. I don't know if you want to address either of the things. I thought it was a nice question to put on the Padlet. Are you able to?
I've got a really bad connection. It keeps like dropping out, so I'm not sure.
Oh, okay. We can hear you, yeah.
Okay, all right. I was just asking, am I right in assuming that you're trying to make research and knowledge more accessible within academia, or did I understand that wrong?
Me?
Yeah, you.
Well, I am. Yeah. Well, I'm not in academia. You know, it's just I'm sometimes frustrated because I love learning and I love reading, and I read a lot of academic work, let's say, for my own development or my own curiosity, and I'm often stunned by the beautiful work academics are doing, either in like hard science or not soft or whatever you call that, like humanity or anthropology or all these sciences, even feminist science. I'm fascinated by the material. Feminism is almost different a little bit, but I'm often wondering, you know, especially in the last 5 years, when I was looking at Brexit and the developments in the US, and to me also not so much of a surprise because I was raised Marxist, so we were told in middle school that this is going to happen, that capitalism will crash and we will be seeing a very, very ugly rundown of these empires. But still, seeing it happen and knowing of all these incredible academics all over the US, for example, and then seeing that government pop out and be ruthless, violent, negative, harmful, you know, like Brexit, in my opinion. I don't know what you guys all think, but very harmful policies and yeah, horrible government structures and government decisions, and it played out now in the pandemic really clearly. I think if you look at the top. The countries who are having mostly, let's say, failed to protect their citizens. Yeah. So I'm saying there's academia and there is all this money poured in on one hand, you know, equally artist grants in Europe. We're getting all these grants, but what's going to happen with the society? I feel it has to be. Sometimes I even were suspicious if this is how they keep us away, you know, this is how they put us in these places where we are happy with our research and happy with our art projects, but we are not bothering, you know, this is the people who actually enrich themselves and establish all these very harmful, greedy things. So that's what I'm saying. Perhaps there is an element of in Recon, you know, in this new platform where I'm thinking of how can we communicate very complex or hidden ideas and structures maybe in a different way, more effectively. It has also to do with fake news and the possible, you know, how everything gets turned around these days in populist media or in often quite alt-right circles. Like they are now having revolutions and they're now having feminism, you know, like they're taking our language, and it's quite interesting, these culture wars. So I'm just counter developing some ideas which are maybe a little bit more useful, I hope, but I'm not sure. But I think in general, it's just we just have to do it. Like there is no other way. You know, nobody has done it better. I grew up under communism, and it had horrible effects on so many people. There was many beautiful things. For example, we had healthcare. I was not afraid to pay my rent. You know, we all had work. Nobody was on the street. It had many beautiful effects. This socialism they built, but there were also very horrible effects. For example, no freedom of speech, and there was no travel freedom, and there was no honesty at all. The surveillance was insane under this authoritarian socialism I grew up in. And so, yeah, I'm thinking about, I was kind of almost lucky that I had the experience of both, and I was old enough to kind of see both societies to an extent to be able to now think further, maybe. And I think it's interesting to do that, and I'm very curious how humans will figure this shit out. I mean, we have so much knowledge, and we are incredibly bright and able of compassion and, you know, like empathy and all these things. So in theory, it's all there. It's just what's gonna survive, or like what's gonna be our survival strategy for that. So that's a little bit, yeah, interesting. And I think it's for me intriguing to participate in this somehow. You know, also with what I can do.
If I hadn't, I think it's because it keeps dropping out on my laptop when you're talking, so I'm trying to make sense of it all. But for me, like if I hadn't have gone to university, I don't think I would have been as had as much accessibility to all of the information that I've been able to like dive into. And not only that, I'm dyslexic and I come from a very poor family, and so like digesting all of this information has been quite difficult as well, like trying to understand it and learn it and make sense of it. And I also, when going through it, felt very frustrated that it seems that a lot of people would not have access to this information or be able to understand it, and how can you make all of this knowledge like so that everyone else can understand it and be a part of it. Like you look at left-wing politics, which is aimed at the working class and all those people, but yet I doubt any, like the majority of them would be able to understand a lot of the stuff that's written about it. Like it's just really frustrating. So I think I kind of understand where you're coming from in that sense, and I agree with you.
Yeah, I guess frustration is a very important motivator also, you know. I mean, it's sad, it's annoying to be frustrated, but it's normal. I mean, you know, our life is freaking hard. So I guess again, organize, find communities where you are having some sort of similar minded, you know, groups, and then go for it. I mean, for example, arts, I think, and music and sound can be very helpful to deliver complicated and actual real life issues and can change something, but also academia can. I mean, look what we're doing now. This is academia. That's what Annie is doing, you know, and also what you're doing in the university. I think every place has the potential to change something. And for example, Vlad is saying capitalism will never die. I think we should just stay a little bit agnostic to this. We don't know how the future will be. And for example, I was just listening this morning to another podcast by an indigenous woman who is arguing about land back, and she's explaining her experiences working with the land back movement. And it was very interesting to listen to her that she, for example, said she'd never thought in her lifetime it would happen, that there would be a land back, a real land back moment. And it has now happened. There has been places where land was given back to indigenous folks. And there is so many movements where actually capitalism comes to its end, and they are failing. There's only one way: complete destruction or pull back and think about shit differently. And they know that. For example, there's something called, I just also listened to one other thinker, Nathan is it Schneider? Maybe he makes a lot of work around co-ops, you know, cooperatives. And it's very interesting to listen to him, for example, how many co-ops actually exist also already in the US, and how they're not famous, and they're not Elon Musk and Amazon and like top 10 billionaires, but they are existing for decades, and they are sustainable businesses, and they are beautiful, organized structures, and they survive. And he was saying he's now making a movement called exit to community. So basically building a technology or a practical way to exit capitalist structures into something more communal, like commons, so to speak, and differently, like collectively governed. It's very interesting. And he said he never thought that these extractivist companies would, you know, even notice him doing his stuff. But he said in recent months there has been really famous, like something like Twitter or big companies coming to him and ask his advice, because they run into, you know, that it's actually a law, like it's a Marxist economy, you know, that there is an end to that kind of greed. So I think we could be open to this, you know, what's possible. It doesn't have to always end into complete annihilation of our species, I think. But you know, we will see. I don't know what you think.
Yeah. We'll see. So I obviously this is taking I've taken a bit of time, so I don't know if someone else wants to ask one of their questions.
Thank you everybody for your cool questions.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah. Does anyone else? Lauren, you've got a question on the Padlet. I can see Yusuf. Oh, someone's put their hand up. Yusuf, yeah, I was just going to go to you.
Hey, yeah, I was just going to ask, I think it's already been covered, but I think my question was about how I think Berlin influenced your the music you make, as well as just your general environment, and yeah.
Yeah. Totally. Also the time, maybe, because I was really there when basically digital technology made its way into personal use of music. That was my moment of getting into music. And so I was, for example, in the first generation of using Max MSP, or I noticed like what is now Logic. I don't know if you guys know probably Logic. Still, I think sometimes it's only Ableton Live is out there. But so I was basically becoming an artist with all these these softwares which were built, you know. So maybe this timing has much more of an influence than being in Berlin, I think, sometimes. Of course, it was important to be in Berlin because I actually was first in London. I decided in my early 20s, when I noticed that I didn't have any profession and I don't have any, because of the wall came down and all this like change in my personal life, I didn't know what to do. So I thought I'm gonna go for it and I'm gonna try and to become a musician or producer. And I put my everything in there, and that was in London actually. It was in Dalston Junction, and I was very much influenced by jungle at the time and London underground club music, and it has also influenced me. But I feel sometimes it's also interesting to think about identity, or how do you say, where you culturally belong to. You know, for example, I went back to Berlin from London because I wanted to use German language. So my first band was called Laub. I didn't talk about this today, but that's how I started. I had my first record deal. It was a band called Laub, and I wanted to use German language in there. and sing in German, because also nobody was doing it, and I felt that the language is so beautiful and I wanted to do it. And that's why I went back to Berlin, and that's how I came out of this Berlin early 2000 scene. And for example, I worked even then with these early labels like Mille Plateau. I don't know if you guys still know that, but many of the electronic artists came out of this time, in the first generation, maybe I would say, the first generation of the new artists. So yeah, I think the place is of course very important where you're at. I went to all these club nights in the early 2000s, end of 90s, you know. It was beautiful time in Berlin. WMF, BMF, I don't know if you were there, Annie. All these two-step, drum bass, grime parties. There were grime parties early on. I saw Kano when he was nobody there, you know. It was, and the techno influence and so on. I was always a little bit critical of Berlin techno as a form of like entertainment. It was never for me really enough or something. I'm personally not, I don't know, maybe it's a German thing. But is this answering your question? And then moving away from Berlin, of course, obviously has had a huge influence as well. But I'm equally enjoying to go back and, you know, be in a club and be there. Sometimes when I'm going to festival, I'm so happy to be 3 days in a club, you know. It's still there, but maybe the perspective has widened, let's say like that. Also to do with age, being a mother, you know. You don't go through life without life affecting you. That's for sure. Is that helping? Is answering your question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Do you want to go to Berlin?
Oh no, I was just wondering because like of the electronic music scene in Berlin is like really like a big thing, and so I was just wondering how that influenced you in general. I'm not really like I think ever since starting this course I've learned a lot more about electronic music than I did before, because I wasn't really interested in electronic music, and so it's like a really new like thing for me to learn about. So yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Yusuf. Vlad, you had a kind of related question, and there's one from James who isn't here today, but I could maybe tag that on after yours, Vlad, if you want to.
Vlad is going to challenge me on capitalism.
Oh, can't get your mic to work. Okay, I'll read out your question for you then, if you can't. So Vlad wanted to know, were you among the Mauerschwächter?
No. Oh, no. I lived in, you mean the people who took down the wall? Yeah. No, I wasn't, because when the wall came down, I was in Halle. It's a city 200 kilometers south of Berlin. And I was actually in a club that night, a student club where I always went. And it was great times, I tell you. It was the high time of being in the East Germany, because the government had already kind of failed. They were not anymore really doing anything, and you could just like squat houses. And I worked 8 days a month, and I could live from that money for the rest of the month. It was awesome. It was like so free time. I was partying hard, having bands, music, you know. It was a great time, and there was no fear, almost, I would say. Of course, we were frustrated with no free speech, and politically it was very difficult, and I don't want to glorify it, but it was a moment of quite some anarchistic, because also, of course, my age. But anyway, so the time was crazy, and then when the news came that the wall came down, I was actually quite shocked. I was quite like, what? It was an incredible shock. And I first had to go to Berlin to experience it myself. And I actually waited 4 months because next morning everybody went there and it was such a big hype. And it was too many people for me. It was too party and too hysterical, and I was a little bit suspicious, and I needed a moment. And then also maybe I had work, I don't remember. And then I went a month later to see West Berlin. I tell the story quick because it's so fun. I went to the Autobahn and I put my finger out to tramp to Berlin to see the West. And Mercedes stopped, Mercedes car, like within a minute, and religious pastor from the West picks me up and drives me to Berlin. And he was so in love with meeting a real East German that he didn't let me go. He showed me around for 3 days in West Berlin. He showed me everything. And it was really funny because I remember standing on the other side of the wall, Brandenburger Tor, you know, the other side, the west side, and look into East Germany. And I will never forget this thing. It was like literally my brain exploded or collapsed or something. It was like I was suddenly realized I was in there. Why didn't they let that, you know? It was this like moment where your entire world system and brainwashed existence falls apart into a million little pieces, and you realize. And it was quite powerful experience. So I was young, and it was really interesting to see how much you can be brainwashed, you know, how much you can be manipulated as a human to accept a condition which is absolutely not acceptable. So that was a good experience for me. And that's why I keep telling it, because I think that can be applied to anything else in any other country, in any other situation easily, you know. Yeah.
Okay, a question from Nina, but maybe I'll just hang this one on from James because it kind of relates, and then we can go to Nina. So James Brown wanted to know, I'm wondering whether you believe that travel to other countries is greatly important when working in sound arts. If so, is there an ideal route to take? Do you feel there are places that lack the means to push someone's progress within the industry, or with globalization, can people really make work from anywhere?
Is he talking about electronic music? She or he? I didn't answer.
James, talking about sound arts.
Sound arts. Well, first of all, I would say sound arts are not an industry. I know this is used now a lot. People talk about industry and music industry. Honestly, I don't think so. That's my opinion. There is no industry. There's no money in that way, you know? Like you cannot anymore sell music at all. It's over. Very few people can. I have my own label. It's very, very difficult. There was a time where this was possible. So in the beginning of the 2000s, it was possible to sell CDs and actually make a living as an independent musician. Then we were only able to tour and make music like this way. This is not possible now either. So it's getting harder. But I wouldn't say that sound art is an industry. It's an art field, and some places have arts funding, and that, you know, is dependent on the government system and so on. So, for example, you in UK have it, we in Finland have it, in Germany have it, US, for example, doesn't have it. There's only private funding. So it's not really an industry. I would not approach it this way. But if you want to practice sound art as much as possible and make this your life, I think it's possible. But I think everybody has to find out his own path. And the less it's a predetermined path, the better. You know, you have to be creative as much in your path as you have to be creative with your practice and your actual sound or music or whatever you're doing, painting. Because it's all about skills and how somebody needs you to do something, or how you can apply yourself to be needed or wanted or something like that. It's quite a simple exchange, actually. So Annie wanted me to do this talk. I'm doing this talk, you know. it has gone like this, on and on. Somebody wants you to play a live show or make an installation or make the sound for your podcast or for your dance piece. For example, right now I'm working on 20 different projects, like about, you know, it's like all different little things, and none of them is something I've necessarily done before. It's always an exploration. And in regards to travel, I really think no. Everything is interesting. Whatever interests you, you know, like, I don't know, there's so many places I still want to go. I was lucky to be invited to. What I find interesting about sound is also the transnational aspect of how we could potentially connect through the world and speak a similar language, and that's what we're doing, right? Like, if you also look at people's work from Asia or from South America or Africa, I don't know what I would recommend you, where to start. I think you have to go where your heart wants to go.
Thank you, Cynthia. I think that James has had something else on this week, but I'm sure he can watch the recording back, and we appreciate that. Should we go to Nina's question? Nina, do you want to come on the microphone? Do you want to? Yeah, Antye can read it, but.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Nina. I'm not a student, I'm just a guest listener.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much for organizing this. It's super cool. Yeah, I'm just I'm a practitioner, sound practitioner from Germany, but I have been living in France since the last 10 years, and so now I've moved back to Germany, and I'm wondering if you can recommend any places or initiatives for sound art and electronic music in Germany.
Yeah, I can. I mean, you could, for example, also join Female Pressure. There you have access to thousands of women, also a lot of Germans actually, and there's also lots of sound artists. And what I like about it is also the list. You can always ask and you get lots of responses, or often you get lots of responses. Sound art. There is Tune City in Berlin. Where are you in Germany?
Right now I'm in the north of Hessen. Frankfurt am Main. And
There's Darmstadt summer courses. For example, I will be there in next summer giving a course. There's every 2 years Darmstadt summer courses, isn't there, Annie? Very much sound art. Do you know this?
No, I've never been, but last week when we had Anea Lockwood, she was talking about.
Yeah, I was there 2 years ago, and now I'm going and make a workshop there with Cedric from Surfer label. Surfer is also a really good label to look out. I mean, Germany is full of sound art. Maybe also interesting. Why Germany? Do you want to meet people face to face?
I'm trying to also to find like a job for food. Yeah, for money, and the things that I found were I looked internationally, but the few things interesting that I found were in Germany, so I decided to move back to Germany.
Yeah, I don't know. In the situation we're in with all this digital life, I think there is some potential for us to also bring ourselves in work-wise, you know, as audio editors and audio practitioners. I feel there is a lot of demand for podcasts and sound editing and things like that. I mean, if you like to do this for work, I think it's a good compromise actually to do some work like this and then be able to do your own practice on the side.
Yeah, definitely.
I can think about it. If I remember something, I can let you know. But I recommend you to join Female Pressure, or there's another very interesting feminist media arts list. It's called Faces. And they also have a nice community where we can learn about how others are connected and work. And there's calls for jobs and, you know, call out for works and so on. So I can recommend this. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for your question, Nina. Anyone else? There was one. Kira, you had a question on the board around. I don't know if you want to ask it. That's solitude.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I came across this a few days ago about the idea of solitude and how being by yourself or spending time with yourself can sort of develop you as an artist. Or many scientists have sort of talked about this. I think Albert Einstein, Nikola Tesla talked about being by yourself to develop your skills. And I was just wondering, how important do you think it is to be by yourself, and how important do you think it is to collaborate with other people?
I think it's tremendously important to be by yourself for some time in your life, for sure. It's not always possible, you know, not everybody can do that. Mothers, for example, I had a time in my life where I was never alone. It was crazy. But I would say that the time I took for myself to be alone in my early 20s have been the most important times to form my own, to just listen to yourself and figure out what, you know, what's really on your plate. What are you really dealing with? It's not possible for everyone, but I do think it's incredibly valuable. And if you can afford it and you can do it, because also for your own practice, of course, you get so much done. You have so much space and concentration possibilities when you're by yourself. You're not being distracted. I think it's a great way, but it's, again, sometimes it's also really nice to just be in a group or be with friends, or it depends on what you can do. I guess I personally love being alone, and I wish I would be more. It's harder later in life, I feel like it's going to come back later, but I think it's very important. Go for it. There's a nice book by Slumflower. Have you heard about this? She wrote a really nice book about being alone.
No.
Yeah, I don't know where you've heard from, but I just saw her on social media. She's a young writer.
Okay.
So I noticed that her book was about that too. No, it's absolutely valuable, you know. I mean, people in Buddhism do it, right? Like you go on these retreats where you are by yourself and you don't speak. It's transcendent. It's transcending somehow, and it holds a lot of depth. Yeah, and when you work with music, it can be, for example, my solo records were all made by myself, completely alone, and I would not show it to anyone until it's out. It's important, I think. Also, not everybody works like that, but I love that process, and I think it is the source for creativity also to a very big extent. Yeah. It's difficult in our days, no? If you don't have a flat for yourself, to be completely alone.
Yeah.
I mean, who can be alone in our days? I go out a lot alone. Like I live on this island and it's quite empty, and I can go for an hour by myself and just be there. It's amazing. You know, the capacities, what we can do with our brains. I mean, I'm just fascinated by this. Do you talk about this in your class, Annie? The connection of sound and brain? Do you guys ever talk about this?
Not in that way that you're kind of going on. It would be nice to.
I would like to learn more about this.
I guess there's always the obligatory kind of psychoacoustics mentioned. Yeah,
Amacher.
On
Who knows Mariana Amacher?
Music and the brain. But yeah. Anyone else with a final question? So we're going to wrap up very soon. We've covered lots of different topics.
Yeah, thank you so much for your interest, and
Yes, thanks, Tim. Right. Well, I feel that we could continue talking for hours about capitalism and communism and collectivity and individualism and sound and music and politics and listening and all these things. We could go on for hours and hours, but unfortunately we'll have to wrap up.
Yeah, sometimes you also just have to give it a break and just let it simmer.
Yeah, but I think it's been really great just to have you talk about some of the things that you've done, things that are important to you, and I'm sure it's been very enriching and inspiring for all of our sound practitioners here and all of our guests who came to listen as well. Yeah, I find your practice super inspiring, Antye, so
Oh, thank you, Annie.
to hear, also because you do so many different things, it's actually impossible to keep up.
One thing I want to say something about this, because it's also an economical question why I'm doing so much. You know, I'm surviving here. I'm doing this to have enough money to survive in this world. I mean, we all have to pay rent, and it's hard, and I'm just working like a motherfucker to survive, and it's great stuff, and I love it. But it's work also, you know. And so I'm doing many projects because I also really have to. Otherwise, I would need a job or something. I don't know. And it's good stuff. I'm always learning as well, you know.
Learning and doing things and kind of expressing critique in forms. It's not a lucrative career. I think we covered this quite early on with the lecture series. I can't remember how it came out, but we were talking about arts funding and how, you know, there are very few rich sound artists. You know, I cannot name anyone who's got rich off sound art, but people do it because they are interested in certain questions and practices and doing things, and I guess they get something out of this creative process and the networks and the people they meet, the experiences they have. So, which is not to say it's not possible. So maybe there will be the next kind of, I don't know, Damien Hirst at some point.
I think becoming rich is absolutely overrated. It's absolutely not interesting. It's interesting to live an interesting life, you know. This is what it's about. It's interesting, or it's worth fighting to live a free and interesting life. That's what you want to do. I mean, I do think sound art could have more attention in society, you know, like not be like, because you cannot sell it really. It's a little bit a problem, but I think in general there's a lot of potential for it to be a really beautiful life actually. If you look at what people have done, you know, Pauline Oliveros, yeah. It helps to look at older generations. Sorry?
No, I just was saying that's a lovely place to kind of to end on that thought of the beauty of sound art and its worthiness in
Yeah,
its
exactly.
neglectedness. Lovely. Okay, well, lots of food for thought. Thank you, Antye, for your honesty, frankness, directness, and just realness. It's been really wonderful to have you and hear you talk about all the different things that you do and the way that you think.
Thanks for having me, everyone, and have a nice day and stay healthy, and I'm counting on you.
You're the future.
You're the future.
Brilliant.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
See you next week.
Much.
We'll have Marlo as our guest. Yay, Marlo. So take care, everyone, until then.
And tag me on your if you release any work or if you make any work, tag me. I'm looking at it. I will listen.
Amazing. Thanks, Antye. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.